nostalgia tour. This is my co-host Raggedy Andy, and today I'm going to be talking about both Raggedy Ann and Andy. So back in 1914, there was a little girl named Marcella, and her father was an illustrator and cartoonist named Jenny Gruel. One day, she ran to her father and said she found a faceless doll in her grandmother's attic. And faceless dolls actually are pretty common. They still make them to this day. Basically, it's just a base, and then you're supposed to add like a face and hair and stuff to it. Anyway, he picked up his pen and drew a happy little face on the doll, added hair and all that for his daughter, and wanted to name it something. So he looked at a bunch of these poems that were all over his desk, and he put two of his all-time favorites to create the name. One called The Raggedy Man, and the other one was Little Orphan Annie. So when he put the two together, it became Raggedy Ann. Now, this origin story does differ depending on who you ask. Some people say it was the father who found the doll and decided to give it to his daughter. No one knows 100% sure, but we know doll was in the attic. One of the two found it, and the dad put a face on it and named it. Anyway, Marcella played with this doll absolutely every single day. She absolutely adored this little doll. Her father thought if she loved the doll so much, surely many other kids would around the world. And then on September 1915, he came out with the design and began creating more dolls to give to children. And fun fact, the original Raggedy Ann doll actually has brown hair, not red. And apparently the original brown-haired Raggedy Ann dolls are worth over $5,000. Anyway, not only did Mr. Gruel make Raggedy Ann, but in 1918 made the first story about Raggedy Ann. And it said that all Raggedy Anns have little candy hearts sewn into them that say, "I love you." Then in 1920, Raggedy Andy was born and went on adventures with his sister and getting popular enough to get his own adventures and his own stories. And my Raggedy Andy that's right behind me is actually based on one of those books, Raggedy Andy Goes Sailing, published in 1940. And you can see he even has a little certificate. Okay, you can still see him. Also in 1940, Fleischer Studios, the same people who made Betty Boop, made what could possibly be the first ever Raggedy Ann movie. I couldn't find anything but a few random screenshots, a date, and the company, and that's it. But it is said that this is where Raggedy Ann and Andy get their red hair from, because the brown hair was too dark, it looked black. Kind of like how in the original 1964 Addams Family, the room was painted pink, so when it was shot in black and white, it would be a light gray, so you can see the characters in front of it, otherwise it would be too dark. The same thing with the hair. They had to make it red, or else it would be too dark. And looking at the screenshots, it does look like it's some kind of dark orangish brown, so we're not at the bright red yet. But yeah, I couldn't really find anything in between the 40s to the 70s, but skipping to 1970, Raggedy Ann and Andy's were flying off the shelves along with their stories. Raggedy Ann now has her signature bright red Little Mermaid hair, while Andy still has orange, but I like him better like that. But all that came to an unfortunate screeching halt when Annabelle was discovered. All that came to a screeching halt when Annabelle decided that they were going to possess a Raggedy Ann doll. So the story goes, in 1970, a nurse got a Raggedy Ann doll as a gift. She put the doll on her bed with her arms stretched out like they wanted a hug. The pose of the doll would change, arms down by the side, sometimes in the lap, sometimes legs crossed. Soon the doll was able to move room to room, but that wasn't the end. Notes began to appear in scribbly child handwriting. Began to appear. Neither the nurse or the nurse's roommate could figure it out. And they ended up calling a psychic medium, like a ghost expert, for help. The psychic said the spirit was a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle who used to play in the field before the apartment complex where everybody was living in was built. She said that the field she played in was replaced with the apartments, making it a sad place to haunt, and asked the two women if she could live in the doll. Saddened by her story, the two nurse women agreed and treated the doll like a real person from then on, taking her and moving her wherever she liked, saying goodbye before leaving for work. But Cal, one of the girl's fiancés, didn't believe it, which made him a target for Annabelle. Cal would have constant nightmares, waking up with scratch marks all over him. It was clear that Annabelle wasn't a sad 7-year-old girl. The spirit lied to the psychic. The nurses called a priest, who then told Mr. and Mrs. Warren, two well-known paranormal experts, and they ended up coming to the house and taking a look at Annabelle and hearing everybody's story, and they realized that there is no Annabelle. It was all a trick by a demonic, inhuman spirit. And because the women gave it permission to live in the doll, Mr. and Mrs. Warren took it away, and once the doll was out, the priest blessed the apartment, and Annabelle was eventually placed in a box made of glass and wood with a cross over top of it and a sign saying, "Warning, positively do not touch." And every once in a while, a priest will come and bless the box to make sure she doesn't get out. And you can actually you can visit the box to this very day. I think you have to ask Annabelle permission before you take her picture, and you cannot touch the box. And some people actually do come on the days where the priest comes, and then they get to watch him bless the box. But anyway, because the spirit possessed a Raggedy Ann doll, and Annabelle is, to this day, one of the most haunted dolls ever to exist, it comes to no surprise that the dolls, just the dolls, dipped in sales quite a bit. But that didn't stop a second movie from being made, and that is arguably one of their most popular movies, Raggedy Ann and Andy's Musical Adventure. As of right now, this movie is up for free on YouTube by multiple people. That's where I watched it, and I love it. And after I got done watching one, like 2 other full-length movie videos were suggested to me. So if one gets taken down, there's like a handful of others. My cheeks look really red in this light. They're actually pink, but they look really red on camera. And yeah. And while watching the movie and doing my research on the movie, I found that Richard Williams, yes, Mr. Williams, Mr. Thief and the Cobbler, Mr. 2 frames per 2 cells animation, Mr. No loops or repeats, that Mr. Williams worked on this movie. And I did a whole video on The Thief and the Cobbler and Mr. Williams and all that, so go check that out if you're interested. But I was very shocked that Mr. Williams worked on this, but then, yeah, so the movie starts off in Marcella's playroom, where we meet Raggedy Ann and her brother Andy. It's Marcella's birthday, and she gets a new doll all the way from France named Babette. And Babette is very homesick, and A captain in a snow globe, I forgot his name, falls in love with Babette and kidnaps her. And it's up to the Raggedy siblings to get her back. Fighting off a taffy monster, meeting a lost toy, going to Looney Land and meeting King Cuckoo, eventually finding Babette and begging her to come home with them. The story's a bit all over the place, but that doesn't stop it from being good. The animation is absolutely beautiful and so fluid. Just look at Annie when he dances and sings No Girl's Toy. Look at King Greedy the taffy monster and just how fluid that is, and the sea monster too. Like, stuff like that takes a lot of work to do. It takes a lot of animation, and it's very impressive because you don't see stuff like that nowadays. So the movie has a total of 15 songs, although most of them are really, really short. The movie is about an hour and 20 minutes long, and it is my favorite out of the Raggedy movies. Then in 1979, there was another Raggedy movie. Oh yeah, Musical Adventure came out in 1977, and then in 1979, there was another Raggedy movie. It was a Halloween special called The Pumpkin Who Couldn't Smile. I remember seeing this one way back in school on VHS. The teacher rolled in the TV and the whole classroom, all sat on the floor and watched it, and I just remember it. I remember it when I first saw it. Taking a break from movies, the Raggedy siblings were on Broadway for a short amount of time in 1986. The show was called Raggedy Ann or Ragdolly. The original was supposed to be based off of Musical Adventure, but so much was changed with maybe one or two songs. The whole plot, everything was eventually changed. We never see Babette, we never go to Looney Land, we never see the Taffy Monster. Like, everything was changed except for two songs. And even then, the words changed. So anyway, in Ragdolly, Marcella was now sick and dying, and it was up to Raggedy Ann and friends to take her to the doll doctor to help her get better, while running away from General Doom and his sidekicks, the Wolf and the Bat. The play did good in other parts of the world like Russia, but when it reached the US, it flopped surprisingly. And it flopped so much that it was considered lost media for some time, but now it's considered found, or like partly found, depending on who you ask. I saw the whole thing on YouTube up for free, and I really liked it. I don't understand how it flopped. It was really cool. I enjoyed it. Anyway, in 1988, the Raggedy siblings got their own show. I couldn't find anything except for a few episodes, and even then it wasn't like a full episode in one video. It was like broken up into several parts, and it was very confusing. Then in 1998 they got their own Christmas special. This is also the only time I've seen Andy get the same bright red hair as Anne. He has orange this entire time until now. But anyway, that's all the information I could find. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!